Let's talk about that familiar moment at the grocery store when you look at the receipt and cannot quite understand how it climbed so high. You keep hearing that inflation is cooling down, yet your budget still feels stretched to its limit. That disconnect is confusing and frustrating, and it is something many people are experiencing at the same time. If inflation is slowing, why does everything still feel so expensive? This gap between the headlines and your credit card statement is at the center of the issue, and you are not imagining it. To understand what is happening, it helps to clear up one of the biggest misunderstandings about how inflation actually works. When economists talk about inflation, they're talking about speed, not altitude. It's a measure of how fast prices are rising, not how high they already are. Inflation is the pace of change, the rate at which costs increase across the economy. If inflation falls from 8% one year to 3% the next, prices are still going up. They're simply rising more slowly than before. Nothing has become cheaper. The climb has just eased. A simple way to picture this is like driving uphill in a car. The inflation rate is how hard your foot is on the gas pedal, while the price level is how high up the hill you already are. When inflation cools, you ease off the accelerator, but you're still moving upward. This helps explain why prices rarely fall once they have risen. Imagine walking up a staircase, where high inflation means running up 2 steps at a time, and lower inflation means slowing to a walk. Either way, you're still moving to higher steps, and each step becomes the new normal. To actually return to lower prices would require walking back down the stairs, something known as deflation. Businesses are generally reluctant to do this once prices have risen to cover higher costs, like wages and materials. Cutting prices can damage profits, signal weakness, and encourage customers to delay purchases in hopes of even lower prices later. At first glance, falling prices might sound appealing. In reality, widespread deflation is something economists work hard to avoid. It's not about a sale at one store, but a broad, sustained drop in prices across most of the economy. When people expect prices to be lower tomorrow, they tend to postpone spending. When millions do this at once, economic activity slows sharply. Businesses reduce hiring and investment, wages can fall, and the economy can slip into a difficult downward cycle. This is why central banks aim for a small, steady level of inflation, rather than zero. In the United States, that target is usually around 2% per year. The goal is to keep the economy moving forward in a predictable way, avoiding both runaway price increases and the stagnation that can come with falling prices. Even knowing this, it can still feel like the official numbers don't match everyday experience. The main measure of inflation, known as the Consumer Price Index, tracks the cost of a representative basket of goods and services, such as food, housing, transportation, and healthcare. It reflects an average household, not any one person's actual spending. Your own expenses may be very different from that average. If your rent rose faster than most, or if you spend more on gas or medical care, your personal experience of inflation can feel much worse than the headline figure suggests. That difference alone explains a large part of the strain many households feel. Another factor is that prices often rise faster than wages. Even when inflation begins to slow, the gap between what things cost and what people earn doesn't automatically close. Higher prices tend to stick, while income may take much longer to catch up. There's also a psychological side to this experience. Most people carry a mental picture of what everyday items used to cost, whether it's groceries, rent, or fuel. When new higher prices become permanent, it feels less like a data point and more like a lasting loss of purchasing power. Policymakers try to slow inflation mainly by raising interest rates, which makes borrowing more expensive and reduces overall spending. This process takes time, often many months or longer, to filter through the economy. That long delay is part of why relief never feels immediate. All of this leads to an important takeaway about what stability actually means after a period of high inflation. It doesn't mean returning to the prices of the past. It means settling into a new baseline where today's higher prices become the starting point for slower, more predictable increases going forward. Understanding this doesn't make groceries cheaper or bills easier to pay. What it can do is replace confusion with clarity. When you realize that cooling inflation means slower price growth rather than lower prices, the headlines begin to make more sense and planning becomes more realistic. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. It does not replace guidance from a licensed professional, and individual circumstances can vary widely.